What's up, everybody? Welcome to week one of the NFL season. It's officially underway. It means we get our first chance of the year to bet on a full slate of games. So what I want to do today is give you my 5 best bets of week one. After that, I'll talk about other games, some games that almost made my list, and where I lean on the rest of the schedule. But there are 5 bets that stand out to me as having really, really good value to start the season. And like I said, we'll go through the rest of the schedule. Throughout the year, I'll keep track of my record. Hopefully, we make some money. Last night, I did lose on the Chiefs. They were favored by 4.5 against the Lions. They lost by 1. I think Kansas City kind of blew that. Didn't like some of the offensive play calling. We won't get into all that. Let's just get right into the start of NFL Week 1. And I'm going to go with maybe the best game, at least on Sunday's schedule. I think the Bills-Jets game on Monday night is the best remaining game. But Steelers-49ers is probably the best game on the entire Sunday schedule. And I am all aboard the Steelers bandwagon. They're getting 2.5 points at home. I like the Steelers to beat the 49ers. I already bet on them to win the AFC at 30-1. Like I said, they're getting a lot of hype, particularly after such a good preseason. Kenny Pickett, I think, had a perfect passer rating in the preseason. So everybody's on the Kenny Pickett train. They love the Steelers defense. They love Mike Tomlin. And I'm right there with him. This is not anti-49ers, and I kind of wish that the Steelers were playing a worse team to start the season. But I think there are a few reasons to believe the Steelers are going to win this game. First of all, the Steelers are at home. Never easy to go into Pittsburgh to start the season, especially at the beginning of the year. They've started the year off really hot. I think they beat the Bills a couple of years ago to start the season in a big upset win. You know Mike Tomlin is going to have his team prepared, ready to go. Not that Kyle Shanahan is not going to have the 49ers prepared and ready to go, but I do think it is a little bit different. Like when you say Nick Bosa is probably going to play, but hasn't practiced because he was holding out for that big contract. Got that big contract, but now he has to go up against a really tough Pittsburgh team with just a couple of days of practice. So I wouldn't expect Nick Bosa to wreck the game defensively, whereas you could have T.J. Watt wrecking the game defensively like he usually does when he's healthy. The Steelers have an amazing record the last few years when Watt plays. He was banged up last year, was the Defensive Player of the Year 2 years ago. I expect a big game from him, and I don't expect Kenny Pickett to be any kind of great quarterback this year. I think he'll be fine. I think he'll be decent, but that might be all Pittsburgh needs with that defense, with their playmakers, and there's a good chance that he's the best quarterback in this game. Brock Purdy was great last year, put up really big numbers. A lot of that, as people have noted, is because of Mike Shanahan's offense. Things are made easier for him. He's got great playmakers. You know, you throw the ball 5 yards to Deebo Samuel, he could take it to the house. Same thing with Christian McCaffrey and Kittle. But with that said, I do think Purdy is a decent quarterback, not as good as his numbers suggested last year. And if you watch those playoff games, the Seahawks had several opportunities to pick Purdy off and kind of make that game a little hairy for San Francisco in that first playoff game. They missed their chances, and then Purdy settled in and beat the Seahawks. Wasn't great against the Cowboys, and then barely played against the Eagles. So I'm not expecting a huge performance from Purdy. I do think he's going to be better than a lot of the naysayers think. Like, there's this idea that Sam Darnold's going to come in, become the starting quarterback, and people don't believe in Brock Purdy because he got a little bit lucky last year. But, he was a rookie, and I feel like people will treat a first-round or second-round quarterback different when they're a rookie because they say, that's part of the growing pains. He'll grow out of it. When they don't seem to have that same idea about Purdy's progress because he's an older guy and was the last pick of the draft. But he still can obviously get better. He was only a rookie. You would think maybe his numbers won't be better than last season, but he probably should be a better quarterback. So that's a little tangent on Purdy and really the 49ers' chances this season. But I do love Pittsburgh. I think George Pickens can become a great wide receiver this year. You've seen all the highlight plays that he makes. Now he's in his second year. He'll be better. I just think this is going to be a very, very good Pittsburgh team. So getting 2.5 points at home in the opener, I like Pittsburgh a lot. So I'm grabbing the 2.5 with Pittsburgh. Now, I did put in a teaser with Pittsburgh bumping them up to 8.5. I also bumped up the Browns to +8 at home against the Bengals. The Browns are getting 2 points against Cincinnati. That's my second best bet of week 1, is the Browns as a slight home underdog against the Bengals. Now, for the season, I like the Bengals a lot more. I think the Bengals could go to the Super Bowl. Not super high in Cincinnati. I don't think we really know what to expect out of Deshaun Watson, but I will say this. Deshaun Watson basically has to be better than he was last year. He was awful in those 6 games. Jacoby Brissett was the better quarterback when he was in there for the Browns than Deshaun Watson was, so I think he'll be better. And Joe Burrow might not come out of the gates real hot because he missed all of the preseason with that calf injury. He didn't play in the preseason last year. He had, I think, appendicitis. And in the first game of the season, the Bengals lost to the Steelers. They scored 20 points. Burrow had 4 interceptions. I think he had a fumble, so he was awful to start. The Bengals got off to an 0-2 start, and then they eventually, cruised and settled in. I think you could definitely see a similar type of thing with the Bengals this year, with Burrow missing the entire preseason. Maybe he's a little hesitant. I think calf injuries now are a much more scary thing than they used to be, particularly because of Kevin Durant. I know it's the thing that my head goes to whenever someone has a calf injury. You worry about it becoming an Achilles tear. So maybe Burrow, at least to start the game, it takes him a while to settle in. And the Bengals are 1-5 against the Browns in the last 3 years. Even though the Bengals have won the division in the last 2 years, the Browns have had some success against them. If you remember last year, Monday Night Football, Halloween night, the Browns beat the Bengals 32-13. Burrow had an interception. 2 years ago, the Browns beat the Bengals 41-16. Burrow had 2 interceptions in that game. Myles Garrett has 9 sacks against the Bengals in their last 6 games. So the Bengals have a tough time protecting Burrow in these games. I know they revamped a little bit their offensive line a little bit this year with Orlando Brown, but who knows how it is going to be to start the year. On the Browns, they do have a lot of playmakers like that. Great running back, and Nick Chubb, maybe the best running back in the game. You can argue that. But Amari Cooper, very, very good last year. So they do have some weapons, and the defense has a chance to be good. So I'm not certain how great the Browns are going to be for the season, but at least for this game, I think they are in a nice position to upset the Bengals at home. So I like them +2, and like I said, I teased them with Pittsburgh. So 2 AFC North picks for you there. My third best bet, let's go to the AFC South. The Falcons are laying 3.5 at home against the Panthers. I love the Falcons in this one. This is, the Falcons are favored by 3.5 against the Panthers. So that line tells you that Atlanta is slightly better this year. They're the slightly better team, maybe 1 point better, 1.5 points better on a neutral field. I'm picking Atlanta to win the division and Carolina to potentially finish in last place in this division. So if I'm doing that, I got to take Atlanta laying 3.5 at home. Bryce Young, I think, has a bright future. He's not going to get off to a great start this year. We saw Carolina struggled in the preseason, and that wide receiver room is not very good. The Panthers did not do him any favors this year. Adam Thielen is Carolina's best wide receiver. He had his last 1,000-yard receiving season in 2018. DJ Chark is their number 2 receiver. He's dealing with injuries. That offensive line is shaky. I just do not like what I've seen and what you hear from about Carolina at all this season. And for me, it's the opposite with Atlanta. The one question mark is Desmond Ridder. I'm not sure how great he's going to be, but Mariota was not great last year, and they won 7 games. So if Desmond Ridder is even close to average, they've got a chance, particularly adding defensive pieces. Jesse Bates goes into that secondary. They were a bad pass defense last year, but they were a great running offense. They were 3rd in the league. And now you add Bijan Robinson, who he might actually be the best running back in the league. So I think they're just going to pound the Panthers to death. I think they're going to run the ball all over them. And I don't think Ritter's going to be asked to do much. So home opener, maybe there's a little nerves from Bryce Young. It's Ritter's first home opener, but he has some experience. And I just like this Atlanta team a lot more than Carolina. Like, the Atlanta skill position players are so much better than Carolina's skill position players. Ritter is in a much greater position to succeed than Bryce Young, even though, like, right now, Bryce Young might actually be the better quarterback, probably is, but he doesn't have Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier and Kyle Pitts and Drake London. Those are all better guys than Carolina has, so give me Atlanta laying 3.5. Fourth best bet, we'll go to another rookie quarterback. I'm actually betting on this rookie quarterback. I bet on the Texans getting 10 points in Baltimore. That line is just way, way too high for a Week 1 game when we do not know what these teams are going to be. You look back at the last few years, the underdogs have covered more games than the favorites in Week 1 because, again, we don't really know what's going on. And you usually don't get a favorite this big. There hasn't been a Week 1 10-point favorite since 2019. In the last decade, in Week 1, teams that are favored by 10 points or more are 1-6 against the spread. So based on just that alone, I love the Texans. And then you look at the fact that I think Baltimore is a touch overrated, and kind of like the Bengals, if they do have a great season, I think they could get off to a slow start. You've got a new offensive coordinator in Baltimore and a bunch of new receivers. Odell Beckham Jr. was on the injury report. Sounds like he's going to play, but who knows what to expect from him. He couldn't get signed from a team last year because apparently I don't think he looked so great in those workouts, coming off his second ACL surgery. You've got a guy, what is he, like 30 now, in his early 30s? After a bunch of injuries, even before 2 ACL surgeries, he was constantly banged up. He's not going to be the same player. Like, maybe he can be a decent player, but he's just, the body can only handle so many injuries. He's not going to be a number 1 type wide receiver, and it's his first game with Lamar Jackson, so that chemistry is probably not there. Rashad Bateman, he's been in and out of the lineup since he was drafted. Zay Flowers, people like him, but who knows? He's a rookie. Just a whole new wide receiving core, basically. And Mark Andrews, it sounds like, is going to play, but he's another guy who is banged up. So I'm a little iffy on this Baltimore offense, at least to start the season. And just like last year, they've got defensive injuries. Don't like their pass rush. And you have to win by more than 10 points to cover the spread. Who knows what C.J. Stroud is going to be, but I think that Texans defense could be better than people think, particularly with DeMeco Ryans coming in. You've had a bunch of one-and-dones at head coach the last few years, and the Texans were terrible. Who knows how DeMeco Ryans will be as a head coach, but I think his defense will at least be better. And maybe they're overlooking the Texans a little bit. This is a good spot for the Texans to at least keep this thing kind of close. So I like the Texans plus 10. And then my last and fifth best bet of the week, I had to swap this one out. I'll get to that in a second because of a late injury. I'm going with the Patriots getting 4 at home against Philadelphia. You'll notice a theme here. Another situation where Philadelphia has 2 new coaches, a new offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator, because they were so good last year that they got head coaching jobs. So I don't know exactly what that's going to do to Philadelphia. I know it's not going to help. Philly is going to be a very good team this year, but I also picked the Cowboys to win the division. So money where my mouth is right there. I think the Patriots can keep this one close. You lose by 3, you're covering the spread. I know that the Patriots' new offensive coordinator will be better than their offensive coordinator last year. Bill O'Brien is a huge upgrade over Matt Patricia. I don't know what the replacement for Shane Steichen is going to do for Jalen Hurts being an MVP candidate. Hurts will probably still have a great year. He probably won't be as great as he was last year because he was so terrific. The odds just say that. And you have Bill Belichick, who has, 7 months to prepare for the Eagles. The Patriots lost in week 1 last year, I believe. I think it was to the Dolphins. So certainly doesn't mean he has a bunch of weeks to prepare that they're going to win, but I certainly think that helps. The Patriots are going to have one of the best defenses this year. I think Mac Jones will be improved as compared to last year when he was playing under Patricia. They've got a better wide receiver room. Ramondre Stevenson and Ezekiel Elliott. Like, Zeke obviously isn't a great starting running back anymore, but he could be a good number 2 running back. So I think the pieces are in place there for the Patriots to be a halfway decent team this year. And I think they keep this game at least close. Philly defense, they lost some guys last year. We saw, C.J. Gardner-Johnson had 6 interceptions for them in 12 games, went to the Lions. So that's a big loss. They lost Hargrave on the defensive line. He went to San Francisco. Fletcher Cox is a year older. So I think the pieces are in place there for the Patriots to at least keep this game close. I like them getting +3. So quick recap. My 5 best bets: Pittsburgh getting 2.5 at home against San Francisco. The Browns getting 2 at home against the Bengals. The Falcons laying 3.5 at home against the Panthers. Texans getting 10 on the road against Baltimore. And the Patriots getting 4 at home against Philly. Now, we'll go through the rest of the schedule pretty quickly. I do want to touch on, like I said, a game that I had to take out of my top 5. The Packers, I like them as 1.5-point underdogs against Chicago. I like them a lot less now because Christian Watson is on the injury report and he's out. And Romeo Doubs is questionable. So if the Packers are without their top 2 wide receivers, that makes it a lot tougher to beat Chicago. With that said, I don't love Chicago this year. They won 3 games last year. If they win 6 games, that's a huge improvement. I realize Fields has better weapons, but we still don't know if he can be a good passer at all. And their defense was terrible last year. They never sacked the quarterback. A bottom 2 or 3 defense in the league, and they didn't add really any big pieces there. That whole secondary is basically back, so I don't know why it's going to be any better. Jordan Love, again, nobody really has any idea what he's going to be. I don't take much stock in all the players talking about how great he is, but he has been there for 3 years. The Packers seemed pretty quick to move on from Aaron Rodgers. They didn't want him back. So they've got to at least have some belief in Jordan Love. They've had him in the building for 3 years. And we saw with the 49ers, like, if a team doesn't believe in a quarterback, they can quickly move on, chalk it up as a sunk cost. So I think Love could actually be decent. We saw what he did last year in that game against Philadelphia. He's, that they honestly might have the best running back room. You can argue, I think, with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. A good offensive line, David Bakhtiari, maybe he's finally healthy this year. So I just think the Packers are a better team than the Bears. So you're getting 1.5 on the road. I love Green Bay. So that just missed my top 5, and I'm probably not going to bet on it now with those injuries, but we'll see how I feel come Sunday. The rest of the schedule, let's see. We got the Bucs getting 5.5 at the Vikings. I like Minnesota a lot this year. I think Minnesota is being underrated. The offense was very good last year. The defense, I think, will be better, because Brian Flores is coming in as the defensive coordinator, and maybe the Vikings won't give every wide receiver 20 yards of cushion and just give up yard after yard after yard. And, we know the Bucs are not going to be a good team this year. They have Baker Mayfield, who is on his 4th team in 14 months. The defense has gotten old. I don't think Todd Bowles is a very good coach, so I would lean the Vikings laying 5.5 there. The Cardinals are getting 7 in Washington. That's just another spot to me. Way too many points when we don't know enough about these teams. Everybody assumes that the Cardinals are going to tank, and I would agree with that. However, nobody knows what Sam Howell is going to be. I know Terry McLaurin's dealing with an injury. It's possible that Josh Dobbs is better than Sam Howell. It is possible. I don't think it's likely. We saw Josh Dobbs not play so great for Tennessee last year, but it is possible. So I just grabbed those 7 points. Speaking of the Titans, they're getting 3 in New Orleans. I'm going to take the Titans because I did pick the Titans to win the division. The Saints, I am not sold on them. I think their defense is a little overrated at this point. Michael Thomas is playing. Good for him. He hasn't been healthy in 3 years, so I'm expecting him to get hurt at any point. Carr should be better than he was last year, but the reason to be high on the Saints is their schedule, and they play a lot of bad teams. It's not, I don't think, because of their players and Dennis Allen, who hasn't proven to be a good coach. So I would take the Titans getting 3. The Jaguars laying 4.5 at Indy. That totally for me is Jaguars or nothing. That's another team I flirted with putting in the top 5. It's just the line has gotten a little too high for me. Scared me away. It's the Jaguars on the road. And the last few years, the worst team in this matchup has upset the other one, so that scared me off a little. But Trevor Lawrence was great in the second half last year. I think Anthony Richardson is going to stink. Maybe not in the future, but this year he'll have some great moments in games where he completes like 40% of his passes and throws 2 interceptions. Jonathan Taylor's not playing. They have no wide receivers. I'm really talking myself into betting on the Jaguars right now. I will think about it. Laying 4.5 in Indy. They really should win this game by a touchdown. So, and again, Shane Steichen, we have no idea if he's a good head coach. The Raiders getting 3.5 in Denver. My quick thought is that Sean Payton is not going to turn Russell Wilson around. Russell Wilson is older, not as agile as he used to be, and just not a really good quarterback anymore. I could be wrong. The Broncos could be a good team without having a great quarterback. Certainly possible. We've seen that, how many times. The 49ers can have a mediocre quarterback and be very good. So it's possible that there's just a different version of Russell Wilson that can become a winner. I just think he's lost some of his physical tools, and now he's a smaller guy, and he's just not the same quarterback. And it won't be surprising if Jimmy Garoppolo is the better quarterback. Now, for the long term, I don't like that at all for the Raiders because Garoppolo always gets hurt. And I think if they get off to a slow start, they could potentially trade Devontae Adams, maybe fire Josh McDaniels, and that could be a tanking candidate. But for this game, getting 3.5 in Denver, I'd go Raiders. Rams getting 4.5 in Seattle. I just go Rams because I'm a huge Seattle guy. I don't think Geno Smith will be as good as he was last year. And I know Cooper Kupp's not playing, but Stafford's playing, at least for this game. That's another guy who has been getting hurt. He's getting older. And a potential tank candidate depending on how the season goes. But Aaron Donald is playing. Matthew Stafford is playing. And they had played some close games last year, I believe, Rams and the Seahawks. So I'd take the 4.5. The Dolphins are getting 3 at the Chargers. When I think about this game, I cannot get out of my mind what happened last year. Sunday night, Tua went 10 of 28 against the Chargers. Was awful. Threw for 147 yards, I believe. And the game was only 23-17. The Chargers won by 6 points. But it was a really one-sided game. And that was really when the bloom started to come off of the Tua Rose a little bit. He was like an MVP candidate up to that point. And then he got another concussion, obviously, and that ended things. But that's when he started to not play as well. And it was their second loss in 5 straight games. So I can't get that image out of my mind. I think Herbert's going to be better this year with a new offensive coordinator. They'll give him the freedom to throw the ball down the field more. So I like the Chargers laying 3 at home. Then we got the 2 primetime games left. Sunday night, Cowboys at the Giants. Cowboys are 3.5-point favorites. The Cowboys are my pick to win the division. They're my pick to be the number 1 seed. Dak Prescott, I think, is 10-0 against the Giants, so I've got to take the Cowboys. That defense, of course, is going to be really, really good. Darren Waller now is on the injury report with a hamstring injury. That's what kept him out last year, so not good vibes for the Giants in this one on Sunday night. And then Monday night, Bills laying 2.5 against the Jets. I might put out something before the Monday night game and get into it a little bit more, but I'm not super high on the Jets this year. I think they'll be better than last year, but I have a ton of questions, especially when you look at that offensive line and Aaron Rodgers, who we just don't know. We don't really know what we're getting. Last year, he was kind of an average quarterback, and now he turns 40 this year, and he joins a new team. And the Jets have a very, very tough schedule to start the year, as I've talked about before. And even if you just look at quarterbacks who were traded to good teams, like Tom Brady, he won the Super Bowl in his first year. Matthew Stafford won the Super Bowl in his first year with the Rams. They struggled a little bit to start. Tom Brady threw 2 interceptions against the Saints in his first game as a Buck. One was returned for a pick 6. They lost that game 34-23. Brady went on to win the Super Bowl. So even if the Jets have this great season, I think they're going to struggle Monday night. The Bills, I think, are kind of being overlooked because they had such high hopes last year, and they were the Super Bowl favorites and didn't even reach the AFC Championship game. So they still have great odds. They're favored to win the division. It's not like people are completely off the Bills bandwagon, but they're actually my Super Bowl pick. Just kind of, I don't want to pick the Chiefs every year. I want to be a little bit different. But Josh Allen is not hurt this year, so I think he'll have less turnovers than he had last year. Last year was a bit of a turnover machine. Diggs is still there. Tre'Davious White is back. He played a lot last year, but it was his first year off an ACL injury. He'll be better. I just think the Bills kind of have an underrated defense, and they are the kings of the AFC East. They have won the division 3 years in a row. I don't see why they won't do it again. So they're laying less than 3 against the Jets, who I have a lot of concerns about on Monday night. I'm going with Buffalo. So I like Buffalo laying the 2.5 at the Jets. So those are my Week 1 picks. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and good luck with all your bets.